Hello everyone out there, welcome to solveitout. This is Annie here and today I'm going to talk about dynamic routes in Next.js along with server-side rendering of REST APIs in Next.js. Here I have built a mini project called as the block container. Here you can see multiple blocks has been fetched from the API. For this I have used an open source API. You can see here this is type code. I have used this API, also has done server side rendering of this API that I will discuss in a few minutes. Here you can see first the blocks are present here. If I click the individual block, you can see here the change of the URL, that is /post/1, as it is block 1. You can see here the block here. If I go back and click on a different block, maybe block 8, you will see here the change of the URL, that is post/8. This is the block 8. So this is the part of dynamic route that I'm going to discuss today. So for this one, I've been using Next.js as the main framework along with TypeScript, how to define the variables with that. And for the style purpose, I have used Tailwind CSS. So today we are going to do this project. So let's jump on to the code. Now I have already installed Next.js along with TypeScript and Tailwind CSS. Here I haven't changed any code right now. In the index file, first I'll delete some of the codes which I'll not need. Inside the main class, let me write hello world. First let's run the code. I'm using yarn here. You can check here, it's running on localhost 3000. And check here, hello world is present. I'll start the code of server-side rendering. Do you know what's the difference between server-side rendering and client-side rendering? Client-side rendering is usually when we call the REST APIs in the useEffect hook. That is, if you are familiar with React and Next.js, you will know that when we do a REST API call, we always do in useEffect, that is when the page mounts. But in server-side rendering, the page will be pre-rendered and it will work very fast. So that's why Next.js provides us the facility to use the server-side rendering through its different props. Like you can see here, through get static props or maybe get static paths and server-side props, different functions are used. Pre-built functions actually are used for fetching the REST API data and also increasing the SEO so that the pages can be loaded in a faster way compared to the pages loading in useEffect or the client-side rendering. Now here, outside the home component, I'll write another function, that is export const get static props. This is a predefined function name. In Next.js, I'll define the type here first, that is get static props. This is the predefined type present in Next.js for get static props, and then I'll write the async arrow function. In TypeScript, we always have to define its type, so it's better to write that. Let me first return it. We'll return a props here. Now, first I need to fetch the API here. So let me store the API in a variable, that is response await, as I'm using async here. Fetch paste the API here. Let me go. Now let me copy the API. Let me go here. Let me copy the URL and I'll paste it here. Now I'll write a query in this URL that is question, because I want a post limit of 10, not more than that. I have written the query for a 10 number of datas or objects, you can say. Will fetch 10 datas here in a variable called data. I will be storing the response in JSON format. When I'm returning this function, inside the props, I'll return the data. I'll save it. So the get static props server-side rendering of the API is completed. Next, I'll call it in the home function as a props with the same name, that is data. Here you can check the data needs to be defined a type. So first we'll define the type and then we'll carry on with the code. Now, before defining the type of the data, let's first check out the API. In this API, you can see we have an array. That means the data will return an array consisting multiple objects in it. Now, in the individual object, we have 4 different type of variable fields, that is user ID, title, and body. Now, user ID will have a number type of component, ID will also have a number type of component, title will have a string type of component, and body will also have a string type of component. Now, as we have checked it out, let's go to the code. As we have checked out the variables present in the API, here I'm going to write export interface, giving a name of props. According to the fields of the API, I'm going to write here the variable and its types. That is user ID of number type, ID of number type, title of string type, and body of string type. This is the object and its fields I have declared. Now I have to return the array. You can see that this API is returning an array, so I'll define it in the type, that is in interface. And write export first, export interface data props. You can give any name, and here I'm going to write the data variable, that is I'm getting here data variable type props. That is, the array here will consist the objects of the props type. Here in the home component, where I have call the data as a prop, here I'll define its type as data props. So here the TypeScript part is completed. Now I'll map the elements that I have fetched from data. That is data.map. Give here element comma index, and I'll return here. First, let me check out I'll give here key I, and then I'll here call element dot field. Let me call title here. So let's first check whether the data is fetched or not. Let me go to localhost 3000, and you can check here the titles are all fetched. 10 titles, this is the hello world we have. All the 10 titles are already fetched here. That means our server side rendering is working perfectly. Now let's move on to the styling of the code. Here in the link tag, I have right now given a hash. I will be defining the href a little bit later. Moving on to the CSS part, here in the link tag, I have given a width of full with a padding of top and down 6, left and right of 4. For LG, the padding of left and right is 10. The text is center, border I have given with the color of gray 50. When hovering, the border color will change to lime 200 with a shadow in it. Also for the transition effect on hover, I have given scale 110 with a hover background color of lime 100. Transition with a delay of 150 of a duration of 300 seconds and 300 milliseconds and with the ease in and out transition effect. Now I have defined the blog ID here with the given name and also the title here. So let's check out on the browser how it's looking. You can see from the API we have done the fetching here. On server side rendering, the API's data is fetched on this page and the transition is also working perfectly. Now let's move to the dynamic route section. Now before starting the code of dynamic route, I want to create the actual link here. Now in href, I want to first put the backticks and want to connect to a path that is /post/ with a $sign. I want to give here the value of the ID. Means each post will open according to its ID value. In the URL, I want to see the post/ID value, so I am giving the href as that. Now, this posts folder need to be created. I'll create here like first post folder, and then inside, as it will be dynamic, so the naming convention will be post in the square brackets .tsx. You can give any name here. I have written post here. You can give name slug or ID or whatever you like. Here I'll write a code like RFC post, and here I'll write posts. Let me save it. If I go to the browser and click any of the blog here like blog 3, you can see here the URL that is 3000/post/3 and the post that we have written in the div is shown here. If I open to any other blog, that is blog 8, you can check the URL here that is /post/8. So our dynamic route URL is ready. Now we have to work on the content of the pages. We'll start the code of dynamic routes with the server-side rendering of the API. First, I'll set the paths of dynamic route, then I'll send the props to the post component here. So first it's export const get static paths. It's a pre-built function and its type is also given in Next.js get static paths. I'll write a async arrow function here. And let me write the return statement. I'll keep it empty right now. Let me first fetch the data from API, that is const res equal to await, as I'm using async. Fetch. Let me copy the API from index page. Paste it here. Now let me store it in a variable of data JSON file. rest.json. Next, I'll create a variable that is const paths where I'll map the data that received the JSON data, and I'll return the query or the ID that is present in the URL. So here I'll write element and I want to return params, some params. Okay, here I have to write the same name that I have defined the file. Like if you write your slug or ID, then you will write the starting as slug or ID. As I have written post here, so I will write the post as the file name. Then element.id, as it will be number, so I have to convert it to string. So dot to string, and I have returned the ID. Now here it needs to have a type. So element will be of type that I have find in index. Let us go there. Yeah, this will be the type of element, because when I am mapping the data, this is the object element type that it consists. So I will copy it from here and I'll paste it here, and I'll see here the error is gone. Now the upper one. So let us write what we are returning from this get static function. Here from the paths, that is when I'm mapping the data, I will be returning in the post element, I want to provide the element ID. Now when I'm returning the path, I want to return the path variable, and also for the second argument here, I want to return it as false, as will not need the fallback here. Okay, so the get static paths function is done. Now we need to pass the prop here to the main post function. Now let me first write export const get static props with the type of get static props, and then I'll write the async function. It needs to be import. That's fine. So here inside the async function, a pre-built variable we can say, that is context. Context means whatever we have returned back in the get static paths, the values we have returned back, we can access it through the help of context. So here I'll write const id context dot params, check it if it has. Then I want the id from post, that is this one. In the post I have sent the element id, so I want to fetch that id here in the id variable. Next I want to fetch that very post related to that ID from the API. So in const result, I will call or fetch the API. You can say the same API. Let me use the backticks here first. I'll copy the API here. Put it here, but I'll change the query. That is, where I'm limiting it, I'll remove it. So now the API is JSON placeholder.typicode.com/post. Now I want to fetch that particular ID post. So here I'll give the ID. Now in this result, only the content of that particular ID will be fetched. Next, I'll fetch the JSON data and store it in the data variable. And I'll return the props here is data. So our server-side rendering of the API is done. First, I have fetched the main data, that is with a limit of 10. I have mapped the data and I have set the post means the URL or the slug of the individual blocks to the element ID. Then I have returned the path here. I have fetched the returned path through the help of context variable here. And with this ID, I have again fetched the API with the ID, given ID. Now only the content is fetched. The required content of that ID is fetched, and I am passing it through the props named data here. Now let me fetch the data in the post. That is data. Now here the data type will be object of props. So let me first define the interface here. That is interface data props. The data variable will be the object, as it's the only object because we are fetching the single content. So it will only be the object of the props type. I'll give here only props. I'll mention the data props here. The TypeScript error is gone. So let me first check the data.id and write here blog. Also, we write here data.title. So let's check in the browser how it's working. If I click like blog 1, you can see here blog 1 with the title is seen. If I go back and click something like blog 5, you can see here blog 5 has been fetched with the title. Next, let us quickly go and complete the CSS part here. So I have completed here the post CSS. Let me first discuss once. That is, for the main div, I have given a display grid with a column of 1. For LG, I have given a width of 7 by 12, and for normal, I have given 11 by 12. Margin will be MX Auto, up and down will be MY6 with a gap of 6. Font and a shadow in LG with a padding of 20 in LG, and in normal padding of left and right will be 4. Now I've given the link tag here for backing to our index page. Now href is slash, that is our home page, with the text of large, underline, and font bold. Here I have given the data ID that I have fetched from this data object, data ID. Then I have given the data title and also the data body. All is fetched from this data object. Now let us go to the browser and check it. How does it looks? Now this is the home page. If I click block 3 here, you can see here our design CSS is ready with block 3. You can check the URL here, post/3. We have fetched the block 3 with its title and its body. If I click the back here, it will go back to the index page. Let us check another block, maybe block 10. And you can see here the URL block 10 is opened with and its contents are shown here with its title, its body, and the ID. Now I guess I have mixed a heading here, so I'll quickly write the heading on the code. Let me go to the index page, and I want to give a heading before the main class. Let me write a div, and I want to write here blog container. Then I want to give a class name here and write down some styles. Text I want to give like 5 pixel. Font want to text center will be line for underline offset. Text save it. If I check it now, you can see here heading is ready, the index page. So the block container mini project comes to an end here. You can check the mobile view of this project. It's fully mobile responsive. If I click an individual block, you can see here the block content is also responsive here. Hope today the concept of dynamic routes in Next.js and server-side rendering is clear to you all. If you have any doubts, do comment down below, and the project link will be provided in the description section. Till then, me Annie is signing off. Let's meet in another new project.